characteristics is that he's going to try to the best of his ability to dodge, to shirk responsibility. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here explains the extent of his stratagems in order to avoid responsibility. What are we talking about specifically here? That there's a call to join the expedition of Tabuk. The hypocrites are not going to join. So however they can shirk this responsibility of joining, they're going to employ whatever means they possibly can. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lists that down now. So the verse is very simple really in terms of its meaning. What I would highlight is that, we have certain responsibilities as individuals and we have certain responsibilities as a community. Many times we have unique and complex ways of shirking of our responsibility. So you have a communal responsibility, so you approach in order to put your shoulder to the wheel. What do you say? What's more important? I've got my family. So look after my family, I must do community work. You're supposed to do both. Look after your family and you're supposed to do community work in a balanced way. You with me? Who's going to look after your parents? But I'm looking after my wife and kids. You need to look after your wife and kids in terms of your nuclear family, but your responsibility also extends to your parents. So this hypocritical of avoiding responsibility and developing unique stratagems, sometimes which justifies, avoiding a certain responsibility, that shouldn't be our way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So from a certain perspective, it's quite humorous sometimes what the brothers and sisters can come up with in terms of avoiding responsibility, and shirking responsibility. We shouldn't be from amongst those, inshallah. Sometimes you have a valid excuse, but many times you and I know that you don't have a valid excuse. Right? So that's basically the idea in terms of these verses. Leading up to this verse, we did get into some sort of complexity in terms of looking at the verse, but the message in this particular verse is very simple. It just highlights the extent to which the hypocrite would avoid assuming the responsibility which he's supposed to assume as a believer. And because he's a hypocrite, he's going to avoid all of these responsibilities. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَوْ يَجِدُونَ مَلْجَأً. So we're going to work quickly through the verse, inshallah, and then we're going to continue with verse number 58. So law would be adatu sharti. Law. Generally, in terms of like conditional clauses, you have a few, don't you? Like you have law, then you have in, and then you have idha, and so forth. Law generally refers to if, but referring to something which is impossible. For example, Allah says, لَوْ أَنَّنَا نَزَّلْنَا إِلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. If we were to send down the angels to them, وَكَلَّمَهُمُ الْمَوْتَى. And if the dead were to speak to them. Now tell me the possibility of it actually happening. It's impossible for it to happen in terms of the law of Allah. Not in terms of the possibility, but in terms of the probability, it's not going to happen. That's normally how the word law is used, right? But here the word law is used like just very literally, if. So we're not going to read those meanings into law in this particular instance. Law just means if. Law yajiduna. The word yajiduna is a present tense verb, as you can clearly see, from wajada yajidu, which means to find. Right? There's two things about find. Wajada yajidu wujud means to find, and then wajada yajidu wujdan, it also means to feel. When you feel something, it's almost like you're finding a feeling within yourself. So wujdan means feeling. Some say that's the thing about knowledge. When you discover something, it gives you a certain ecstasy. That's called wujdan. When you discover something, as you're finding something, in other words, you're learning something. So for a believer, the learning experience is a enjoyable experience. There's an ecstasy in terms of learning. Law yajiduna, but here it means to find. So this hypocrite, if he finds, and now what does he find? Allah gives a list. So in other words, he's going to explore every possible opportunity to avoid the responsibility. No, but I have to look after the kids. No, we'll get a babysitter for you. No, but I don't take well to babysitting. Are you with me? I'm just giving an example because you can see now they're going to be lists now. لَوْ يَجِدُونَ. If they were to find. Wajada yajidu means to find. لو يجدون, if they were to find ملجأ. So the word ملجأ is from لجأ يلجأ, which means a place of refuge. If they were to find a place of refuge, number one, أو مغارات. Now the idea is to understand literally, but the extent to which a hypocrite will go to avoid responsibility. The word magharat comes from the word ghara. In a chapter which we read quite often, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about ghawran. Gha-wa-ra. Allah talks about water, that if Allah wanted to, Allah could cause the water to sink into the depths of the earth. فَمَنْ يَأْتِيكُمْ, then who will bring up that water from the depths of the earth? So ghara means for something to reach the depths of the earth. You with me? No. Ghara. So do you get an understanding in terms of, in other words, they will go to the very depths of the earth in order to avoid responsibility. So the word magharatun comes from the word ghara yaghuru ghawran. That's the first word. Then magharatun. Is there a word that relates to ghara yaghuru ghawran in your mind? And magharatun, because the singular of magharatun is magharatun. We familiar with the form of ghar. You know, we talk about ghari Hira. How do we, the cave of Hira. Okay, so a cave in Arabic terms is that sort of like a hole, for lack of a better term, in the earth or in a mountain which is big enough for a person to enter into. That is called a ghar. In other words, a cave. So this hypocrite, in order to avoid the responsibility, any place of refuge, or Allah gives the example of a cave. But if you look at it in terms of meaning, it's like to whatever extent is required to avoid the responsibility, to shift the responsibility, that person is going to take those steps and measures. أو مغارات أو مدخلا أو مدخلا. Most of us read it as مدخلا. Some of the scholars read it as مدخلا. If you take the word madkhal, it comes from the word dakhala. Dakhala means to enter. Madkhal, a place to enter. So in other words, again, whether it's a place of refuge, whether it's a deep ravine cave, right, we basically metaphorically can go and avoid the responsibility, أو مدخلا, or any place we can dodge, so to say. لَوَلَّوْا إِلَيْهِ. What does Allah talk about the hypocrite? Does he present himself and, you know, I am ready? Or what does he do? لَوَلَّوْا. La, there is for emphasis. La for emphasis. Wallaw. Walla yuwalli means to turn around. Ilayhi, and head towards it. In other words, he's going to avoid the responsibility. Wahum yajmahun. Wahum yajmahun. The word jamaha yajmahu. The word jamaha yajmahu. Normally when you use the word jamaha yajmahu, we use it in relation to a recalcitrant animal. For example, farasun jimahun. You know, it's difficult for you to restrain. So, you know, because the animal wants to like bolt and run away. So you can end up bolting and running away of the animal. Like this, in order to avoid the responsibility, the hypocrite, he bolts and he runs away. How does he run away? There's an element of fear and an element of speed. So the word yajmahun, jamaha yajmahu, like for example, if I must say ajmahu min al-fasl, then like frightfully, fearfully, I dash from the class. So you get the, you know, conceptualization. It's not meant literally as such, but figuratively you get to understand in terms of what the message is, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. لَوَلَّوْا إِلَيْهِ وَهُمْ يَجْمَعُونَ. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the hypocrites in terms of avoiding responsibility. May we not be from amongst those. That is the lesson. Shirking responsibility. You know, when we are given responsibility, then we shoulder that particular responsibility. And it's almost like along the lines of when Allah tasks you with something, He won't task you with something greater than what you can bear. You with me? So therefore there's no reason. And the reason of I'm unable to. If you were truly unable to, then Allah wouldn't have tasked you with that responsibility, because He says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah doesn't task a person with more than what he can bear. Right? That's very true. One of the examples that some of our scholars give is that Allah says to male folk, for example, and to women folk equally, in this particular regard, that lower your gaze. So what does the person say? I can't. I can't. So if you're saying you can't, it means that what you're actually saying is that Allah's asking me to do something that I'm unable to do. And Allah, who is most wise in terms of His legislation, a wise person doesn't ask you to do something that you're unable to do. So our basic responsibilities, is not a responsibility to make you say, no, but I can't. So I can't is sometimes it's a spiritual ailment, because the moment you say you can't, that you fall into the category of the victim. And the victim is the right or wrong. The victim is always right, and wrong is being done upon the victim. That's a spiritual element of today's time, where we consider ourselves as victims. May Allah protect us from that particular malady. لو يجدون ملجأ أو مغارات أو مدخلا لولوا إليه وهم يجمحون. Next verse number 50, verse number 58. نعم. ومنهم من يلمزك في الصدقات فإن أعطوا منها رضوا وإن لم يعطوا منها إذا هم يسخطون. Allah goes on. Now remember that Surah Tawbah is what Ibn Abbas has referred to as a Surah al-Fadiha. Fadaha means to embarrass or to humiliate, and the humiliation is by calling out. So Allah is not going to name the hypocrites. Allah is going to give you the characteristics, and through the characteristics they are going to be recognized. Okay. So one of the characteristics of the hypocrites is as follows. The objective of a hypocrite is he in it because he believes in Islam, or is there some worldly benefit? So for many of them there will be a worldly benefit, therefore they feign being Muslims, and had they not got that worldly material benefit, then they would have outrightly been disbelievers. So it's very much a worldly convenience for a hypocrite to project himself as a believer, because he's getting a monetary benefit. So what happens now is, when the Prophet ﷺ receives charity or the alms tax, and if he doesn't distribute it to the hypocrites, then the hypocrites are going to take issue. But if he distributes it to them, and then the objective of feigning being Muslims is achieved, so they will be happy. So Allah SWT talks about that particular quality. وَمِنْهُمْ, and min would be harf jar, minhum. The whom there would be the pronoun minhum, and from them, from amongst them, referring to the hypocrites. Man would be such individuals. يَلْمِزُكَ فِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. يَلْمِزُكَ. لَمَزَ يَلْمِزُ. No. لَمَزَ يَلْمِزُ. What translation do you have for لَمَزَ يَلْمِزُ? Criticize. Slander. Slander and accuse. Find fault. Give me 1 second, Habib. Now, so the Arabic definition of lamz would be ta'yib, to find fault, and qadah, to criticize. So you can use those two terms, qadah and ta'yib, to criticize or to find fault. So from amongst them are those who yalmizuka, lamaza yalmizu, to find fault. The ka there would be the pronoun referring to the Prophet ﷺ. Yalmizuka, who find fault with you, fi sadaqat. Here again, just to understand the literal meaning of the verse, they find fault with you in terms of sadaqat. So the first thing is that the word sadaqat is the plural of the word sadaqah. Sadaqah refers to a charity. Now we draw a distinction between sadaqah on the one hand and zakah on the other hand. However, we find in Quran, by and large, the word sadaqat, particularly the plural form, is used to refer to the alms tax. So in other words, وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَلْمِزُكَ فِي الصَّدَقَاتِ, generally it is used to refer to charity and the alms tax. Other times it's used specifically to refer to the alms tax, in other words zakah. Here it's used general. They find fault with you in terms of sadaqat. So now, what problem do they have with do they have a problem with the charity, or do they have a problem with the distribution of the charity? Distribution. So therefore, if you read the verse literally, you're not going to come to the correct meaning. And this is a common phenomenon in Quran which we need to be particular of, especially when we are translating. So there are from amongst them who find a problem. They don't find a problem with the fact that there's charity. They don't have a problem with charity. They don't have a problem with the collection of the alms tax. What do they have a problem? With the redistribution of it. You follow me? So here in terms of the cause of revelation, they say there was one Bedouin. He went by the name of Abu Jawad, I speak under correction. And then the Prophet ﷺ had received some gold as charity. And he had redistributed this. So this person came to the Prophet ﷺ and said to him, like addressed him, and said to him, i'dil, be just. So the very personification of justice, which is the Prophet ﷺ, here you find a Bedouin saying to him that be just. So the word is a true word. It's a true word, but what is meant thereby is falsehood. Because he's taking issue now with the Prophet ﷺ, whose distribution was just. And he's saying now be just, as if the Prophet ﷺ was unjust in terms of his distribution. So the Prophet ﷺ would retort in certain instances, إِن لَمْ أَكُنْ أَعْدِلْ فَمَنْ يَعْدِلْ. If I am not exercising justice, then who can exercise justice? Whereas I'm the most fearful and the most conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this particular regard. So they don't have a problem with the charity, they have a problem in terms of the distribution of the charity. And now what happens is, what's the problem? فَإِنْ أُعْطُوا مِنْهَا, and this is an interesting part of the verse, فَإِنْ, in there means if, أُعْطُوا. The word أُعْطُوا is from the word أَعْطَى يُعْطِي إِعْطَانِ, which means to give. But this is in the passive form. If they are given from it, رَضُوا, and then they are pleased. Now there's an interesting thing here in terms of the way this verse is understood, because if you understand as if they were given, that they, who does it refer to? The ones critical of the distribution. You can understand it in that particular way. Does it make sense to you? So here's a group of people, they're critical of the redistribution. So then the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if they are given, and then they will be pleased. So it refers to the lamizun, those are critical. One. Another understanding is that if they were given, in other words, this redistribution didn't come to the critics, but it came to their fellow hypocrites, then they would be happy. So as long as either they, the critics, or they, like the henchmen, their party, is on the receiving end of the financial aid, then they're fine. So it's very problematic, because a hypocrite, he has a vested interest in that he wants to benefit, or those around him wants to benefit, but that's not the purpose of the charity. The charity is that the poor, the categories of people must benefit in general, whether they're from your camp or from somebody else's camp. It's inconsequential. People must benefit from the charity. And this is a problem in terms of, and this is a hypocritical trait. Like you can do so much work as long as the recipient is your immediate family. It's not right. You will only do that amount of work if yourself or your family or your near and dear ones are actually beneficiaries of it. But here in this instance, they say the Prophet ﷺ gave some gold and he gave it to the shepherds. Why did he give it to them? So they can use that as a means of bettering themselves. And also of sort of endearing them towards Islam, because Islam is now providing you with financial aid. The hypocrites weren't happy with that, because how does that benefit us? It doesn't benefit us in any way. And we're actually in this whole thing so that we can get some financial benefit. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes issue with that. And when they are not given إِذَا refers to all of a sudden, هُمْ يَسْخَطُونَ. Hum إِذَا, then suddenly, the word suddenly would be, whom they يَسْخَطُونَ, they dislike it, sakhata. They're filled with anger and rage in this particular regard. And to end of this particular, inshallah, verse number 59, how are we looking for time? 11?
5 minutes.
11:20. Ajib. I think we started a bit late today, no? Yeah. It's like an extended break. Now I wanted to do some other exercise in class now, but we can do it maybe No, next week is the last week. 2 weeks. But when is the Merah? Next week. 2 weeks though. No, 20. No, what happened is the first years when they complain a lot, because I'm always coming there like 25 past, half past, 25 to. So inshallah we stop here. But if this is going to be potentially our last class, then inshallah we go to verse number 59, and then we because then that would be إنما الصدقات للفقراء. So Allah talks about actually, which is a good point really, because you see the hypocrites are taking issue with the Prophet ﷺ in terms of the distribution of sadaqat. So how do you get yourself out of such a pickle? Because the accusation could be leveled at the Prophet ﷺ that you very arbitrary in terms of your distribution of the sadaqat. And then the Quran says no, that actually it's not an arbitrary redistribution of the sadaqat. إنما الصدقات, then Allah will list the 8 categories of those who are actual recipients of zakat. So Allah SWT says, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ رَضُوا مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ سَيُؤْتِينَ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَرَسُولُهُ إِنَّا إِلَى اللَّهِ رَاغِبُونَ. So they are not happy when talking about the hypocrites, but Allah SWT says, had you been happy? So is Allah opening up the door or closing the door? This is your current conduct, but if you just change your conduct, then it will be better for you and better for everybody else as well. What we were speaking about in terms of our introduction to the class. وَلَوْ, and if, again وَلَوْ, أَنَّهُمْ, that indeed they, referring now to the hypocrites, if they were رَضُوا, they were content, مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ, مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ, okay, with that which آتَى. What does ata mean? To give. Here the word, if you look at the word ata, there's always a word that, and you read about it every now and then about ata. It means to give. So what word in the Arabic language do you know that, so ata, it's written something like that. So you telling me that ata means to give, right? So what's the what do you call it, synonym for ata, to give, that you are more familiar with in the Arabic language? Ata. So you do the word ata, and here on this scale it will be a'ta. So both means to give. But what's the difference? Allah uses it like somewhat interchangeably at times, but there's a few profound differences between them. Okay? The most salient one is that when you give something to somebody, right? You're either giving, in Arabic they refer to it as like dawat. And dawat, the closest translation I could come to was, like you're giving somebody a corpus, a thing. So for example, let's say I give you like a sister on a Sunday, and it's very disappointing, just for the record, since I am on the record, that one comes and there's no co-sister, there's no what do you call it now, a twisty, which is a distant relative to it, but alhamdulillah, by the grace and mercy of Allah, another distant relative called the bola in the other class. So at least alhamdulillah, the sunnah of a Sunday is fulfilled. So if I give you a bola, right, if I give you a bola, I say to you, أعطيتك bola, I gave you a bola, right? You follow me? أعطيتك bola. So bola is a tangible thing. You can see, feel, touch, and ultimately taste it. You with me? So then in Arabic you would use the word أعطيتك. Everybody with me? So, but now there's another thing that's called like mawahib. Now mawahib now refers to non-tangible things. Now when Allah talks about blessing you with a non-tangible thing, for example like wisdom, Allah grants you wisdom. Allah's not going to say أعطيتك al-hikmah. You can, but Allah's more often going to say آتيتك al-hikmah. I granted you wisdom, because wisdom is a non-tangible thing. You follow me? Now what words does Allah use here? Ata or ata? And it becomes profound in a sense that, so now you ata this year ties into mawahib, which for us is like non-tangibles, right? So when Allah is saying, if you were happy with that which Allah gave you physically, no, we're not talking about the physical distribution, but we're talking about the apportionment which is going to be mentioned now. So Allah has given you, and what has Allah given you? Allah has given you an apportionment in terms of that if you happen to be poor and indigent, and then you qualify to receive that portion. You follow me? Which is unique also for us, I think, particularly maybe for you as a professional in terms of distinguishing between things. Allah distinguishes between, because as a poor person, what do you have a license to? A given thing, or do you reserve a right to a given portion? A given portion which is distinctly different in terms of a right. And then also your right, is it more established when you get a portion percentage or when you get a given thing? A portion. You're entitled to a percentage. You're not entitled to a given thing. And this one here, ata, is much more stronger. So Allah SWT is saying is that وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ رَضُوا, if they were content. How does the verse go on? وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ رَضُوا مَا, with that which آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. So ata means to give, and you understand now what give means. And again, another lesson in terms of, because if you translate in English, you're going to say give. And give, ata, give. Ata, give. The other difference which it may be nice for us to highlight here is that if you were to use ata and ata to mean the same thing, we've already said there's a difference in terms of what it relates to. Here it relates to a thing, and here it relates to a non-tangible thing. So, but there's also a difference in terms of that ata. Ata also means, ata, there's a difference between ata and ata in terms of amount. So when Allah uses the word a'ataytuka, it means that Allah has given you, but in relative to ataka Allah, ataytuka, I give you, when Allah uses the word ata, it means that when Allah uses the word ata, He's giving you more than what He would give you when He says a'taytu. So you know, like when the cave, you know, the cave dwellers, when they were in the cave, so what did they say? They raised their hands and what did they ask Allah? Allahumma a'tina or atina. Atina min ladunka rahma. Oh Allah, give us of your mercy. So when they use the verb ati, they're not asking for a little. Look, we are in dire circumstances. We don't need a little. We need a lot. And when you want to ask for a lot and you just want to use one word, right? To give me, but give me a lot. So I'm going to say atina. Oh Allah, grant us, but it implies granting a lot. So when Allah talks about Sulaiman and Dawood, Allah gave them wealth, a little or a lot? So what does Allah say? Ataahu Allahu al-mulka wal-hikmah. Allah gave them the kingdom. What kingdom? Mulkan la yanbaghi li ahadin min ba'di. It's a type of kingdom that's not suitable for anyone after it. So ata means like a lot. Ata as opposed to a'ta. Wallahu a'lam. You'll find this a lot, and maybe you can, it's not like a rule, but it's a rule. The other interesting point is about what is Allah saying here in this verse. That which Allah has given, as you understand now, and His messenger. So what Allah gives and His messenger gives, is it different or not? So you can understand it's the same. You can understand it as the same. And just because, like, you know, because that which, in terms of legislation, that which the messenger does it carry the same weight of what Allah does? It carries the same weight. You know, it's like when the Prophet ﷺ makes something compulsory. You can't say that, look here, that was made compulsory by the Prophet ﷺ, and therefore the compulsion of that is on a lesser level than what Allah made compulsory. You can't say that. It's equal, right? So now you can understand that if they were pleased with what Allah and His messenger gave, understanding that what the messenger gives is the same what Allah gives, because the messenger gives in relation to what Allah has commanded. So if you have a problem with the division, and you're actually not having a problem with the Prophet ﷺ, you're having a problem with Allah, if you understand in that particular way, because it's the same. The other way of looking at it is that what Allah gives, Allah legislates, but then Allah allows room for application to the Prophet ﷺ in terms of certain divisions. For example, at the time of war, that look here, the booty that we got at this particular battle is going to be divided, some of the booty along these lines. So it allows prophetic discretionary in terms of redistributing. Because if we consider now the Prophet ﷺ to also be a lawmaker, by extension of the lawmaking capacity which Allah grants him, you understand the difference? So if you understand there's two distinct entities, it means that the Prophet ﷺ has scope for application. It's like when you work. So basically, one manager may say, look here, you do A, B, C, D, E, right? Or the other manager would say, in principle, this is what I want you to do. You use your discretion and you. So if you understand Allah and Rasul to be one entity, it's A, B, C, D, E. Or alternatively, that this is what Allah prescribes, but He's also allowed the Prophet ﷺ discretionary in certain things. So then don't take the Prophet ﷺ to task when it comes to him exercising his discretionary, which ultimately also is based on revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's two ways of looking at it. And I think also for us, because we're managing our lives and we're managing our work and our families and so forth, we look at the approaches and now you can learn much therefrom, and Allah knows best. وَقَالُوا, and they said, if they were to be happy with that which Allah gave them, and they said, Hasbunallah. Okay? So now everybody's quite familiar, and I hope you got the lagu right also. I'm not going to ask you as a collective because then you're going to get it right. I'm going to ask you individually to recite the lagu now of Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. At least being 7th, 8th year, 9th year students of Mizan, at least by now you should have gotten the lagu right. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. So if they had to say Hasbunallah, what does Hasbunallah mean? Allah is sufficient. So waqalu, and they would say Hasbuna Allah. So Hasbuna mudaf ilayh. So is hasab for us Allah. So what does hasab mean? The one meaning which you correctly pointing out is Allah is sufficient for me. Allah is sufficient for me. That's one meaning of it. What's the other meaning of, so Allah is sufficient for me? But here in this context, sufficiency would mean what? The scholars give the word of ijtiza. Look, I'm poor and I want to receive something. So in this context, if I'm saying Allah is sufficient for me, in other words, Allah will grant me, what I require. You with me? There's another meaning for Hasbunallah as well. And what is that? I have worries, I have concern. Who takes care of my worries and concerns? Allah. Hasbunallah. So those are the two meanings that we have for Hasbunallah. So the one is Al-Kafi. Hasbi Allah. Allah is sufficient for me. Allah is enough for me. Right? I don't need anything else. One meaning. The other meaning is Allahu Waliyu Mahammati. Allah is the one that takes responsibility for all of my worries. In other words, Allah is going to resolve all of my worries. Those are the two meanings. And you can understand that the first meaning applies here. So yu'teen Allahu min fadli. So again, Allah is sufficient for us. What's going to happen? Soon. I might not get anything now, but soon, what's going to happen? Yu'tina, ata, yuti, ita, and again the same verb is being used, and you understand the significance, right? It refers to that apportionment, and also refers to, this is very unique for me now, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of Quran, when He talks apportionment, He addresses it in accounting measures. And this comes from the word ata, yuti, because ata, yuti means you get a percentage. It's not you get a given thing. Because if you get a given thing and then from an accounting perspective you get entitled to a given thing. But I was not talking about a given thing. Allah is talking about a percentage. Which is very unique. So yu'teen Allahu. Allah will give us in terms of a percentage, in terms of an apportionment, min fadli of His grace of it. Wa Rasuluhu, and His messenger, inna ilallahi raghibun. Indeed we are ilallahi, to Allah, raghibun. We are desirous of that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, and Allah knows best. Jazakumullahu khairan. We stop there inshallah bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we'll continue when we meet again inshallah.